Hello, everybody. It's me, Bigfoot, Michigan Rob. This is typically when I say welcome, it's Friday, but no, it's Wednesday. And this is Dogman 2. For those of you who did not see Dogman Island, it's the first one. Emailer that I got from Rick and Sally that lived in Grosse Ile, Michigan, that had a Dogman encounter. I do recommend that you watch Dogman 1. But if you're already watching this, well, you'll be able to figure out the story. It's just that Dogman 1 is more in depth. It's a 17-minute video. This is an email that was sent in not 10 days later after the premiere of Dogman Island. I got a response back. There was questions that I had wanted asked of the original emailer. So he responded. So I've been sitting on this for 2 months. So this is it. I hope you enjoy this. It's awesome. Awesome story. Again, it's called Dogman Island Part 2, The Aftermath, New Terrors. And this is the email that I received. I'm going to read you part of it. I received this email from Rick and Sally 10 days after the premiere of Dogman Island. I quote the opening email. Rob, this is Rick. It is funny on the first email that I sent you that I only mentioned my wife Sally's name. I do apologize for that, as I was so immersed in telling you the story. I will email you this story, but would it be okay to call you on the phone and join in a speaker conversation along with Sally and myself over the phone? Perhaps you can record it and ask questions. I only ask that you do not post or make the recording public, but just tell the story like you did with Dogman Island. You did a great job and are a great storyteller, and you did do Sally and myself justice. Thank you for that. As you recall, the story took place in 1981 after our purchase of the home in 1979. At the time, we were both 25 years old. Today, 44 years later, we are the ripe old age of 69 and still need to remain anonymous as our family holds prominent positions in the community. We have a most successful family business dating back to the 1940s, and our esteemed name is still affluent and respected. Breaking our silence publicly could, I fear, ruin our established name. I trust you, and I want you to finish the story. That was signed by Rick. Again, everybody, just a quick note. I recommend that you do watch Dogman Island, just so you can get the full story. This will make sense to you guys that haven't seen it, but much more enjoyable if you saw the first one. And I'll give you a brief synopsis of Dogman Island. This is a couple, Highland in Grosse Ile, Michigan. A house, on an island in Grosse Ile, Michigan. They heard howls in their basement cellar, wine cellar. They found a wall. It was hollowed out. Behind the wall was a tunnel. And you guys, this tunnel went underneath the Detroit River, where they came across oversized wolf-like prints. Upon further investigation, they lived on the river, and across from the river was another island. And the cellar and this tunnel that they walked through, it was imperfect. It lined up perfectly to the island across from their home. And they went and investigated it, and they discovered a dogman, and they had a telepathic communication with it. So again, you can see all that on Dogman Island. Go check it out. So I'm starting Dogman 2. The start, Dogman Island, the aftermath. So, as many of your viewers asked, as I noticed in the comments, is if we sealed off the tunnel. The answer is hell yes, Rob. As soon as we got back from the island, we were so disturbed at our encounter that we put the home up for sale a week later and sealed the tunnel. Being that we are prominent to the island, we decided to stay on Grosse Ile, but just to leave the original home. Yet at the same time, Sally and I knew that our investigation of these dogman creatures needed to continue. 5 months later, we completed the sale of our home and purchased a newer home, a more modern home, 3 miles up the coast. We still had a view of what you, Rob, so eloquently coined the name Dogman Island. Sally and my work was yet to be completed, as we still needed answers. As a young and vibrant, adventurous couple witnessing these creatures. Upon settling into our new home, we waited approximately 6 months before taking our trip back to Dogman Island. We carefully planned our trip, and I was able to entice a friend of ours who was an established hunter and tracker. We, for the purpose of the story, will simply call him Bob. We explained to Bob what we had experienced. He is the only person in our circle of friends and family that we have told this, with, of course, the exception of telling you, Rob. Bob's first reaction to our encounter was as expected, one of sheer reluctance and skepticism. He asked us to repeat our story over and over again. Then he said, finally, "Okay, Rick, Sally, I have known you both and the family for many years, and I do not believe you to be making up a tall tale. I believe you." Bob went on to explain that he believes that such creatures do exist. He was a firm believer in Bigfoot and recalled the stories of bipedal dog-like creatures that roam the state of Michigan. But the stories were not reported compared to Bigfoot. Now you have to remember, this is 1982, and the first reported dogman sighting was in 1987 in Wexford, Michigan. So Bob was really ahead of his time when it came to this field of study. We were excited that Bob believed us and that he knew about these monsters and gave us the confidence we all needed to go back to Dogman Island. However, this time we did not plan to hike the island. We planned to camp on the island for however long it took to hunt down, capture, or kill this unknown beast. You have to remember, we are all in our mid-20s and imagine being the first ones to discover the unknown cryptid. 8 a.m., morning of the trip. Much like our first trip to the island, we took our Sea Ray boat and anchored it 50 yards from the island. Myself, Sally, and Bob jumped on the 8-foot rubber skiff and motored onto the island beach. Bob was armed with a shotgun, I brought a hunting rifle, and Sally carried a .45 sidearm. We bought a tent just big enough for us to sleep in. The tent was not very big. It was just big enough for us to get some brief shut-eye, as sleep was not going to be a priority. We are on an all-out mission to find the dogman, or in this case, these dogmen. As Sally and I knew from our previous visit that there was more than one. We set up camp around 11 a.m. We started into the woods. Like before, the island was overgrown with vegetation and some overgrowth. We had to hack and cut our way through, finally coming upon the trail that Sally and I first traveled on our first trip on the island. Not to our surprise, a deer ran across our path, still begging the question how deer ended up on this island. Further up the path, we again stumbled upon deer bones and several deer skulls, as we did again the previous trip. We all immediately had an uneasy feeling run through our body. Bob was amazed at these findings, especially for the size of the island, which is only the size of 4 to 5 football fields in both length and width. Day one ended with not a single sighting or track of this creature. We had decided to head back to camp with only an hour or so of daylight remaining. We pitched a fire and began to cook up some steaks we had brought from home and planned to start through to the other side of the island at daybreak. Then it began. Those oh so awful howls, yet familiar howls, that we heard during our stay at the island and from the cellar of our original home. Bob was amazed and proclaimed that these howls he could not recognize, and an expression of fear fell upon his face. He said, "We are being watched." Sally and I, both in consort, proclaimed the same sentiment back to Bob. We were being watched. The howls grew closer and got louder. Then those familiar red eyes appeared from the depths of the tree line. Unlike the first encounter, these eyes were not at ground level by 3 or 4 feet like the previous trip, but they hovered 7 feet from the ground, and these eyes were glowing, and they were approaching, and they were getting closer. There were 3 sets of eyes now, very distinct and all in our focus. I reached for my rifle, set my sights on one of the pairs of set of eyes, and I fired. An almost paralyzing and much louder howl, more like a scream, shook the woods. The set of eyes that I fired at disappeared. Now is when I realized that I made a grave mistake. I feared for my life. I feared for all of us. The 2 remaining sets of eyes rapidly emerged from the tree line and now took on the shape of 2 huge wolves, bipedally charging and growling at us, yelling, howling at us. Bob joined me with the shotgun, Sally with the .45. I armed with the rifle. We sat back, we aimed, we fired at these wolf-like creatures. Yet they kept coming. They did not slow down. They reached within 10 feet of us, ferocious red eyes ablaze. Then, in an instant, these dogmen seemed to evaporate into steam. The howls stopped, but in replacement of the howls was a clear and distinctive human voice that retorted, "Leave while you still can." Much like the telepathic voice heard not a year ago. But this voice was not telepathic. All 3 of us hear the message, and the voice was audible to all of us. Needless to say, we all immediately left the island, never to return again. This will be my final communication with you, Rob. There is something evil on that island. Still, to this day, Sally and I can hear, in the distance, those howls, much like the previous story. And also, like the previous story, Rob, not a single neighbor can hear these sounds. It is almost like these creatures are for our eyes and ears only. We shall not move. We are retired and just try to accept that evil exists in these waters, and as long as we stay out of them, we will be safe. Thanks again. Signed, Rick. Thank you, Rick, for the follow-up email. Thank you, Rick, for letting us know that you sealed off that tunnel in your original house. I'm glad that this story ended, that you're not going back. I think that these things do plague you. I do find it odd that you're the only 2 that have seen or heard the howls. As you said, much of the islanders kind of look at you, and I get that you want to remain anonymous. Hopefully your neighbors keep this under wraps as well. I wish you the best, my friend. Enjoy your retirement. Drop me a line if you're listening, and I know you are, whenever you like to reach out. Hope everybody enjoyed this. Bigfoot Michigan Rob, Dogman Island Part 2. Again, go check out Part 1. It's a cool story, and I appreciate each and every single one of you. Please like, please share, please subscribe. Until next time, Bigfoot Michigan Rob, and I'm out.